The enemy charged like a wave. Dracula sprinted forward. They collided instantly, weapons drawn for a deadly fight. Dracula, undeterred, waved his arms in the chaos, facing the enemy fearlessly, despite being outnumbered. Nothing could rattle him. Dracula charged into the enemy, shattering Turkish soldiers like sandcastles with every swing. With Dracula's relentless assault, he was unstoppable, and no one could stand in his way. When necessary, he transformed into a bat, moving with superhero agility. With superhuman strength, Dracula wielded his weapon as if slicing through air, instantly becoming a demonic presence wreaking havoc on the battlefield. Wherever he went, Turkish soldiers screamed, bodies littered the battlefield, blood flowing like a horror movie. Even though surrounded tightly, Dracula was like an invincible cockroach. They couldn't get close. No one knows how many perished that night. The moon turned crimson from the blood. Half an hour later, the battlefield fell silent again, with fallen foes scattered everywhere. Reinforcements at the castle were stunned, barely believing the intensity of the devastating battle. Dracula warned that the enemy would be back, and to escape the cannon fire, everyone had to hustle to the monastery on the mount. Turning thousands of soldiers were wiped out. The Sultan Fury led 100,000 into battle himself. Staring into the darkness, Dracula realized he only had 3 days after that. He might turn back into a mere mortal and be unable to save his kin. Even with his silver ring at the ready, the temptation to bite others' necks was as hard to resist as a cat's desire for fish. It was simply irresistible. Before Dracula, countless Turkish soldiers were impaled on stakes, and it suddenly hit the Sultan that Dracula had changed quite a bit. To stabilize morale, he had soldiers wear headscarves. Thus, the 100,000 troops marched to the monastery. Under the Sultan's leadership, they reached the valley below the monastery in just half a day. Talk about making an entrance. On the walls, Dracula saw the Turkish army approaching, a half-zero quarter plus or minus, pondering counterattack. Just then, a bat flying toward the watchtower caught his eye. Sensing some sort of connection, Dracula dashed to the top of the watchtower, where a mass of bats was gathering like they were at a family reunion. As Dracula raised his hand, the bats seemed to feel the call and spread their wings, buzzing loudly like they were at a rock concert. Bats from the surrounding peaks began to flock to the monastery, and even more astonishing at Dracula's call. Countless bats swarmed in from afar, but the soldiers, distracted by a watermelon festival, completely missed the spectacle. By the time the Sultan noticed the horror in the sky, it was too late. Chai also saw something strange outside the monastery. Thousands of bats swirled around the monastery, with the center of attention being none other than Dracula atop the watchtower. Under Dracula's command, the bats set their sights on the Turkish army in the valley, displaying a wild intensity. With a wave of his hand, the bat soared into the sky, resembling a fantasy film scene. The swarm morphed into a giant claw, and with a push from Dracula, it lunged at the Turkish troops, instantly wiping out thousands. Beneath Dracula's astonishing powers, billions of bats surged into the sky. It was truly breathtaking. Each bat seemed part of Dracula's arm, as if dreaming when he fisted. The bats reformed into a giant fist, and with a mighty swing from Dracula, it crushed down from the sky, taking countless Turkish lives in an instant. Dracula zeroed in on the Sultan in the chaotic crowd, where the Turkish army had lost all semblance of order. In chaos, no one heeded Sultan's commands. Seeing this, Dracula turned into a bat and dove off. At that moment, the monastery counterattacked, firing rockets, and Dracula charged into the hail of arrows. Almost simultaneously, he attacked Turkish troops. The battlefield filled with screams, as if death had arrived. Dracula descended like a mythical figure, harvesting fragile lives, until he flew to his target where the Sultan was pinned down by bats. The bats formed into a solid figure, and Dracula strode towards the mastermind, ready to claw his way through to the end. Little did he know he faced only an armored decoy. Seeing trouble, Dracula frantically asked where the Sultan was. Meanwhile, the ambush team had infiltrated the monastery, and Marina was just realizing the danger when 3 enemies barged in. She fought back valiantly, but even with her bravery, she couldn't fend off 3 assailants at once. Marina seized the opportunity to escape with her son, while Dracula frantically searched for the Sultan, realizing sunrise was fast approaching. The Sultan hid among the crowd, while Marina and her son fled to the watchtower, only to find Dracula missing. It was pure chaos. The assassins were right on their tails, and the two could do nothing but quiver with fear, faced with the threat of flying fists. Marina clung for dear life to the ledge, hanging precariously, just as a killer's fist came crushing down. Her scream alerted Dracula, who darted upwards without regard for the troops below. Sadly, he was too late when he arrived. Marina was forcefully hurled down. As the sun rose, Dracula collapsed helplessly, watching his wife plummet from the tower. He threw caution to the wind, diving down to catch her, as if that distance represented the ultimate test between life and death. His outstretched hand missed, and they fell rapidly, crashing to the valley below. The Sultan's plan succeeded as he quietly led the boy away, leaving the battlefield in silence once again. Screams erupted from within the monastery. Without Dracula's protection, the soldiers were powerless to resist as the Turkish soldiers ruthlessly slaughtered every life in sight.